For this lesson, we are going to be looking at watercolor techniques. And as always, we're going to start off with just thumbnail sketches. These are just quick sketches that are looking at the values of the drawing and kind of the layout of the drawing, the composition. You can see here that I'm working with boulders and stones. With this one here, I was working with possibly having a hill and some trees up here. And over here, I'm working with my tractor over here on the right, and then closer to the middle, I have some trees. With this, I'm only thinking about the composition and the values and where my eye is drawn and where I want my emphasis to be. I am not thinking about color yet. That is very important when you're creating your thumbnail sketches. Ultimately, I decided to go with this one here. From here, you need to make a detailed drawing. Not really detailed, I suppose, as much as just a thought out drawing that is full size. And so I created a full size layout of where I wanted things to be. I decided that I wanted to crop it up here at the top as I was drawing this. So you can see in my final painting that it is more square than in my sketch to get from the get-go. So I decided to square this up. Then the next thing to do is to create thumbnail color studies. That's these here. They are very, very basic. I am not looking at creating anything but looking at the color and laying down my paints and seeing if that's the paint colors I want to choose. You can see here there is very, very little detail in these. Simply laying out the composition and figuring out the colors. Now, to get to this point, my final painting, this is my final painting. To get to this point, I have a few more steps. So I decided I wanted to mask off the tractor. And the reason being, because in my studies, I could tell I was going to have sky hitting these parts of the tractor and then grass hitting the bottom part of the tractor. And so to be able to paint a fluid sky that skips from here and then also stays similar here and then on the back end as well, it would be easier to just work my brush over tape or masking fluid than it would be to try to etch all the way around this tractor. You could do this with masking fluid and it wouldn't be no problem at all. You could just work out the edges with masking fluid. However, if you had something like a face with hair or something larger, you don't want to waste all that masking fluid. So let me show you a way to mask something off without using masking fluid. We're going to use tape. So I have this tape here. I'm simply going to lay it down on my cutting board. And I'm going to overlap it just like this. And then I'm going to lay this down to see if that's a good size. And maybe I need one more. And then I'm going to use tracing paper to lay this down. I'm going to be using this ink tracing paper. There are several different types of tracing paper. There's blue, there's ink, there's a graphite. But what I have done is I've taken this drawing and then I took it to the light box and I traced just the contour lines, just the outline of this. Very simple. I'm not having any of the insides because I just need the outside of this. Then I'm going to take my tracing paper and I'm going to lay it dark side down. Going to lay this drawing on top of this. And then with quite a bit of pressure, I'm going to trace over this drawing. Now that I've got to right here, I want to show you the reason I drew this off, because I want to have this plant here, but I want it to be a lighter colored plant, as you can see here. So I don't want to have those blues or these ground colors on top of that plant. So I want to keep that a white paper as well. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the X-Acto knife to very carefully cut out my drawing. Once I have it cut out, I'm going to simply pull up, and I'm going to very carefully work it around my cuts. Now what's left is my tractor. You're going to have to go very slow from the side that you started the tape on to the other side while picking this up. And this is harder than you think it would be because you don't want to rip it. Okay, from here, I'm going to place it perfectly where I want my tractor to be. So I'm first going to put my full-size drawing down. I'm going to try to figure out exactly where it needs to be, and then I'm going to remove that paper and lay this down perfectly at the right angle.
Because this is where the tractor will be.
Then the next step is to stretch it. I need to make sure that this watercolor paper is stretched before I start painting. So I'm going to take the time to do that.
If you mess up, simply pull it up and try again before ripping it.
You can look at, when you press it, look along this line here, and you can see if it's straight or not. Now that I have the tape down, I can paint with the sky and not have to think about going around the tractor. You can see here that I have a scrap piece of paper that I'm painting on to see how I want my colors to be. I start with the yellow so that I can let it dry and then go around it with the blue. I have a dirty cup of water that I'm washing my colors off on, and then I have my clean cup. I am then going to create a puddle of water right here, and I'm going to create my blues in this puddle. I don't want to paint directly from the paint cakes. If you do that, you might wind up getting a color that you're not happy with, and it really just doesn't have the consistency of creating a nice large puddle to be able to paint from. So from here, I'm going to test this color, see if that's what I want to go down next. And if I like it, then I will continue on to my final paper. I can see here, I think I want just a little bit of darkness creeping in right here. And I actually think I want it to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to try to correct that when I come here on my final painting. Up here, I know I want to have quite a bit of a dark color, and so I'm really going to pull in a little bit of that black and a little bit of that darker blue to create some darker colors that are up here. I'm seeing now too, with this yellow drying, I might like to have a little bit of this peach here. So I may go in and do that while I have the yellow down. Because you really don't want the yellow and the blue to mix. That's going to give you a green. So you really want to have this yellow completely dry before you go in putting blue. So I honestly probably need to wait for this to dry, but for this video's sake, I'm going to go ahead and start to paint this. You can see here, I don't have to wait to try to figure out where I need my tractor to be. I can just paint right on top of this. And that's what's really nice about masking this off. I'm allowing my brush to get a little dry right here, and it creates some nice sky effects within here. I'm going to grab some of those darker colors and work those into this cloud here, letting it kind of soften up. You can see I can be really wild with it and not have to worry about that tractor. This is good for the sky, and I'm going to come in and add some ground. Once again, you want to make sure you're working from a puddle and not from the cakes themselves. I forgot to tell you why I didn't mask off the trees. And the reason I didn't mask off the trees is because I know green plays well with blue. Green and blue go well together, and I know that this green is going to be darker than the sky. So I am simply going to add some green trees in here on top of the sky, and it's really not going to show through very much. Now here where I have this orange, you can see possibly I might have wanted to test that theory and make sure I test it on a scrap paper before here on the final paper, because I'm starting to see some of this, this orange come through in my green trees that I was wanting to create. If it is going to be darker and you know that it's going to play well with the background color, you don't have to worry about masking it off. However, if you do a test study and you find out that it's not going to play well with your background color, then you probably need to mask it off. And so in this case, possibly I needed to mask off the trees. But in the other painting that I did, I just had a blue sky and it worked well, and so I did not mask off the trees.